Alrighty, so now we have our build script finished. We have two major things left to do with the auto updater. First, we need to automate the build process. Well, we've already automated the build process, but we need to put it in an environment where we can monitor the build process and trigger specific builds to happen on a computer that may or may not be our production machine. Now, typically your build computers will be different than your production machines, but in this case, we are just going to be working against a single VM, which will have both the deployment and the continuous integration built right into it. And once we finish that, once we get TeamCity all working and everything, so that we can kick off our builds very easily, we'll also need to actually finally build our launcher. And the launcher will be pretty easy to build once everything's put together, and the reason for that is we've done pretty much everything. Although a lot of the stuff that we're doing kind of has, a little bit here, a little bit there sort of feel to it because, this is such a it's a relatively large system with a bunch of moving parts. I've tried to organize things kind of as logically as I could. And so that means that once we get to the launcher, which will be the second to last thing that we do, it'll be pretty straightforward. And then the last thing that I want to do, which isn't necessarily required, but we are going to be playing with some testing. So we do want to see that, but that will be in a different video. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up TeamCity. How do we do that? And what is TeamCity, by the way? I know that we talked about it in the intro, and I've been talking about or referring to it throughout this series, but TeamCity is nothing more than a continuous integration tool made by JetBrains, the same people who make ReSharper. And what it allows us to do is, you'll see right there, we can just play this video, you can see little examples of its interface. You'll see that it allows you to organize all of the things that you might want to do in a project in an automated fashion, and allows you to, it just gives you so many features for handling projects and deployments and building and testing of projects that it's really a no-brainer to use a product like this, or Jenkins or Cruise Control or whatever alternative, or Bamboo. I've just personally been using TeamCity for quite a while and I really like it. Simple, straightforward interface, easy to set up, gives you a bunch of features for analyzing different things such as build times, who broke what, and all that fun stuff. So we're just going to get this installed and we're going to hook it up to our system. So let's go ahead and go into download. And what we're going to do is we are going to grab TeamCity. And this will come with the professional server license, includes 3 build agents, is provided for free with any downloaded TeamCity binary, and gives you access to all features with no time limit. The only restriction is a maximum of 20 configurations. You can increase those configurations by purchasing additional build agent licenses if you wanted to. So 20 build configurations is more than enough for our project. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download now. And so, yeah, this is not a free piece of software in that, it's unlimited, but it is very permissive, and you can do everything that you need to do in order to put together a game using TeamCity. And again, if you outgrow that, throw a couple $100 at them and you'll get more build configurations. As far as the, you can also have the enterprise server evaluation, but per its name and the fact that you have to apply or apply to even get a trial probably indicates that it's not the appropriate choice for small to medium-sized teams. But yeah, I highly recommend this piece of software. We'll see in a moment how it's going to make handling our deployments a lot easier. And it's really, like I said, simple, straightforward. I mean, there's not a whole lot to understand about what TeamCity does. Basically, TeamCity gives us a button that we can press, and when we press that button, a build gets fired off. That's it. It allows us to pre-configure. You can think of it like just pre-configuring bat files at a very basic level, where we pre-configure these bat files, we click it, runs through some automated steps. But hopefully, by the end of this video, I'll convince you that doing that for deployment is not the most optimal solution when you have something available to you, such as TeamCity. And I know there's also another product, a competing product called Bamboo, which I have used, and I do like. It's from Atlassian, which Atlassian's pretty cool. But I do believe they have a 10-user license for $10, but I think that also limits your build configurations as well. Okay, so I'm getting a little warning for some reason about it being blocked. Are you kidding me, Chrome? Is this a joke? This is not a joke. I wonder if this is the executable. TeamCity.exe. That's probably a terrible idea. Why would it block it? I mean, that's just weird. Okay, by changing okay, so Chrome did fully download it into that CR unconfirmed, but uh, it didn't rename it. So I just renamed it to TeamCity.executable, and I don't have to worry about it potentially being corrupt because, as you saw, it just verified the installer with probably some sort of checksum that it has built into it, which means that this is good. So yeah, that's just a little hiccup that happened on my machine. It's unlikely that'll happen on your machine because it's never happened to me before. All right, let's just go ahead and play the installer game. Next, I agree. Destination folder, I'm going to put it on TeamCity. And that's because that's the only option I really have on this virtual machine. As far as what components I want, I do want the server, and I do want it as a Windows service, but I also want the build agent. We'll talk about what a build agent is here momentarily. We have to give it a data directory as well, and then we hit next. So while it's installing, I'll talk about what a build agent is. Well, like I said, TeamCity is all about being able to press a button and have an automated process happen. But where does that automated process happen and who's responsible for it? Well, that's what a build agent is. For example, you could have a TeamCity installation somewhere that doesn't have a built-in build agent, and then you could have like 3 other computers that have build agents installed on it, and then they'll coordinate with your master TeamCity install. It also makes it possible to do platform compatibility because you could have a build agent installed on a Linux machine, and then you could have your TeamCity on your Windows machine, and then they'll communicate with each other, and that is good. Yes, good. That's the word I'm going with. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. As far as build agents, we'll only need one. Some limitations of build agents. Build agents are obviously they can only be doing one thing at a time. So if you only have one build agent, you're only going to be able to do one build at a time. But that's perfectly acceptable for our situation, and it's really perfectly acceptable for any small organization or an organization that's only working on one product. You might potentially want to increase the amount of build agents if you're in a medium-sized company, but like you saw earlier with the licensing, you can get up to 3 build agents for free. So you can just deploy them wherever you want and do builds for Mac OS and builds for Linux and builds for Windows, or just have 3 Windows builds and so on, so on. Okay, so the TeamCity port, it's sitting there and it's wanting to do 80. I don't like 80. Let's do 84. The reason I don't like 80 is we already have IIS listening on port 80. So I just want to do 84. And then I'm going to hit next. And I actually, this is a lot nicer than the installation that I had when I installed TeamCity originally. I originally have been working with TeamCity 7, not version 8. And yeah, build agent property. So this is your build agent. Your build agent is going to be listening on 84. It's going to be working on these temp and work directories. These are the directories where it's going to check out your files from source control, dump them in those directories, and then work on them, do whatever task it is you told it to do. And so what I mean when I talk about these directories, I mean that you probably wouldn't want, you may or may not want to put them on something like an SSD or an HDD, just depending on the size of your repository. So just note the size constraints that you might have when choosing where to put the temp and work directories at. Other than that, though, I think this is a good configuration. I'm going to save it out. That's saved. I got a warning from the firewall. I'm going to go ahead and allow access to Java because TeamCity is written in Java. Then it says specify a user account to run TeamCity service as. I can run it as a user account or as the system account. I'm going to run it as a user account, and I'm just going to run it. I'm just going to run it as Nelson. Why not? In a production environment, hold on. Service log is set to account failed to log in. User account restriction. Possible reasons blank passwords are not allowed. I'm just gonna run it as system then. Or no, I'm just gonna show you guys how you should set this up. If you're setting this up on a production machine, what you do want to do is you want to create a user called TeamCity and then set up the permissions properly. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna open up MMC. So start run MMC. I'm going to add a snap-in for my local users, and I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna hit OK. I'm going to go into users, and I'm going to add a new user, and I'm going to call him TeamCity. His password will be bleh. Uncheck that, check that, and hit create. So now I have a user that TeamCity will be running under. So that's what I want. So username, TeamCity, password, bleh. Hit next. Okay, so now I have to specify the user account to run the TeamCity agent as. I'm going to run it as also TeamCity with the password of bleh. And then I want to start these two services, so I hit next. Now I'm going to open up TeamCity Web UI after setup is complete. Now it's possible that we're going to run into some errors. On our build agent in particular, he might not have permissions for this folder yet. I'm not sure if TeamCity is going to automatically create the proper permissions for a server when you set up it to use a custom local account. And we'll find that out here very, very shortly. So if we get errors, don't be scared. It just might be a permissions issue. And we'll resolve them as they appear. Okay, now we get TeamCity first start. So it says TeamCity stores configuration settings on a data directory, which is empty. Good, because I have never installed TeamCity on this before. Now we have database type. Now we could use HSQLDB, which is a internal database system, kind of like SQLite. You can think of it like that, but for Java. What I'm going to do is I will go ahead and switch it over to MySQL so that it'll run a little bit faster. So what I need to do is I need to, first of all, install the JDBC driver and copy it into that directory. So I'm going to first download the JDBC driver by clicking on that handy link. And I do want to find a zip for this. See, this is wanting me to use a MSI. I don't want an MSI. I wonder if I do platform independent, I can download a zip archive. I wonder if this will just include the jar in it. So I'm going to say no thanks, start my download, and we will see. We'll go on a little adventure here and discover if the platform independent download of the MySQL connector simply includes a jar file. And hey, look at that. So now we do have a nice little jar file, and with that jar file we can just dump it into whatever directory it is that TeamCity wants us to dump it into, which is C program data JetBrains TeamCity lib JDBC. So it says copy the file, or copy the JDBC connector into this folder, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to click and drag, and we're going to copy, and it's going to take 1.5 years because this is a VM running on a HDD. And then I'm going to hit refresh JDBC drivers, and it says loaded MySQL JDBC drivers. Sweet. So that means we are now good. Let's go ahead and put in our database host, which is going to be 127.0.0.1 for our local host. And then we need database name, username, and password. I am going to be slightly... I'm going to cheat. I'm going to create a new database, and then I'm just going to have TeamCity login as a root. I mean, really, this isn't a MySQL administration video, but if you were doing this in production, you would want to create a new user called TeamCity that only has permission to the database we're about to create. But like I said, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to create a new schema. I'm going to call it TeamCity. I'm going to pray that it will support a UTF-8 Unicode CI correlation, which I believe is actually going to be the default in this installation, but I never memorize the defaults to the correlation, so I always explicitly make sure that I select UTF-8 Unicode case insensitive. So I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to ask me to, what is this? Hit apply, which is going to create the schema, and our schema is created. Of course, it's empty. Let's jump back over to TeamCity and let's fill out this data. Database name is going to be TeamCity, which is the database I just created. Username is going to be root. Password is going to be Nelson, because that is my root database password for this computer. Let's hit proceed, and let's see what happens. See, I don't actually know if it's doing anything. I don't know if that button's like grayed out because it's disabled, or if it's grayed out because it's doing something, or let's just look at the class. Is it disabled? It is disabled for some reason. Why would it be disabled? Maybe just type in localhost instead. Nope. There we go. Wow, that is not intuitive. Okay, so you type in the stuff, and then you hit refresh JDBC drivers, and then magically your proceed button will fill out. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. TeamCity is now creating a new database. So TeamCity is just setting up the schema that it's going to need in order to work against our MySQL database. So our MySQL database, the advantage over using MySQL to the internal database, A, is obviously maintainability and the ability to administrate specific aspects of the database schema and security, but B, it'll also run significantly faster. The internal database isn't particularly quick, it's all in memory, and it's basically, like I said, like SQLite, which you would never use SQLite for production, right? Well, I mean, you could, like for example, Firefox uses it to handle its bookmarks, but that's not, when I say in production, I mean in a server environment. And right now, obviously, I'm just trying to fill this video in with some words while TeamCity gets its act together and properly initializes its server components, because it seems to be taking a little bit of time to do that. In the meantime, while it's doing that, let me see if it created the schema. Let's see what the schema looks like. Sweet, it created a schema. So by coming back here, hitting refresh, we now see all of the tables that TeamCity created for us. So we see that it did indeed properly connect to the database, and it is filling our database up with its awesomeness. And it's still initializing. I think I'm going to have to go to my last resort and pause the video while it finishes spinning those green little arrows and wait, it's doing something. It's thinking. I'm just going to pause the video. And right after I hit pause, it decided to get its act together. Okay, so we now have the seventh license agreement that we're not going to read in this video series, and we are going to blindly accept it. And why not? Let's send anonymous usage statistics to TeamCity. Alrighty, now we have create administrator account. My username, I'm just going to do Nelson LeKay. One quick note on little tools like this, I really don't like using like first names for account names that are going to be used company-wide. I always find that to be not good practice. So I'm just going to use my full name. Password, let's just do Nelson, because Nelson is like the password I've been using for everything in this series. We're just going to create account. In a perfect world, we would fire up LastPass and generate a 40-character password with random punctuation and random symbols, but we don't live in a perfect world, so I'm just going to use Nelson as my password. But if you guys are following along, please do go download LastPass or equivalent password manager and generate a 40 character long password because really passwords are not secure, ever. Okay, so I guess it's loading, and it's going to say, welcome to TeamCity. Let's save my password. Please fill in your profile. I could honestly care less. Okay, so the main window that you're going to be dealing with in TeamCity is the Projects tab. That is the tab that, not surprisingly, shows you your projects. So a project is nothing more than a collection of configurations, and a configuration is nothing more than a set of repeatable steps that TeamCity can do in order to produce some sort of results, such as deploying the website, building something, testing something, all that fun stuff. So obviously what we would want to start off doing is creating a project. But what I want to do instead is I do want to go ahead, configure my firewall to let me access 84, and then I'm going to be doing all this configuration on the host machine instead of the guest machine. I'm going to remotely manage this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's open up our firewall, Windows Firewall with advanced security. And honestly, I could probably just turn my firewall off because this is a virtual machine in NAT, but I just want to leave this step in here for people who might forget to punch through this port. So we're going to go ahead and add a new rule, add a new TCP port. We're going to open up 84, hit next. We're going to allow the connection, and we're going to call it TeamCity. Actually, it looks like it already punched through. Anyway, regardless, we have our TeamCity, port 84, opened up. Let's switch over to my host here, and I'm going to type in its IP address, which I can't remember. So I'm going to open up CMD and type in ipconfig and get 192.168.2138, 2138, autocomplete to the rescue, port 84. Sweet. Log into TeamCity. Username Nelson LeKay, password Nelson. Okay, so now things are a little bit more snappy now that I'm on my host. Might not make a difference to you guys at 10 frames a second, but does to me. So let's go ahead and get started. What we want to do is we want to create a new project. So I'm going to create a new project by clicking the Create New Project button. I'm going to have the project parent be the root project because this is, I don't have any other projects to select from. Now the name of the project, I'm going to say 3D Buzz MMO. And now I have the project ID. The project ID I'm just going to call MMO. Project IDs, I'm sure this is just going to say like make it short and memorable. Is probably, oh, it has a whole book about project IDs. Well, the ID is going to be something that should be short, memorable. It's kind of like a slug. And I like using something obvious and small like MMO. So let's hit create. And we will soon have a project. We now have a project. So this probably looks terrifying. There are a lot of different options that we can do here, a lot of different buttons to click, a lot of things to fill in, but fortunately, we're only going to have to deal with a handful of these in order to get our project building. Now, the first thing that I want to do before I even build a configuration is I want to add a new VCS root. VCS stands for version control system, such as Git. So I want to create a new VCS root so that TeamCity knows how it can take the code that's in my Bitbucket account and dump it locally so that it can work with it and do things like deployments. So I'm going to hit the Create VCS Root button, which is going to give me this. So I'm going to select Git, which hopefully the Git provider is installed. Seems to be installed, sweet. VCS root name, I'm going to say MMO Bitbucket. VCS root ID, MMO _ BB. Fetch URL. Fetch URL is going to be the URL to the repository. So what is the URL to the repository? Well, let's go ahead and open up my Bitbucket account. And grab this. Actually, I don't know when the last time I've even committed to this is. So here's Bitbucket. Here's my repository. Oops. Buzz MMO. Wow, those are some really good commit messages I got there. Let's go ahead and actually get a push going first. So I see that I have 71 commits yet to push. So I'm going to open up my source tree, and I'm just going to say push, or 7, sorry. And I'm going to push the master branch. And we're pushed. Okay, so now that I've pushed all of my commits to Bitbucket, we should be able to refresh and see that new activity. And as you see, I pushed 7 commits with even more descriptive commit messages. It goes well with the awesome README that I have right there. Anyway, so now what we have to do is we have to get the URL. So we can do HTTPS or SSH. I'm going to try to do SSH here because I believe we can, yes, we can upload a private key or use our default private key. So I am going to use the GET protocol. The GET protocol, the SSH protocol, is significantly faster than the HTTP protocol. The HTTP protocol will just be slower and lamer, but the HTTP protocol is easier to authenticate against. So you have a bit of a trade-off. Do you want it to be easy to authenticate against, or do you want it to be faster? Well, I'm going to go with I want it to be faster, but it's just going to require a little bit more configuration. So that's going to be the fetch URL. Now we have our default branch. We haven't talked a whole lot about get branches, and right now we only have one branch called master, and I suppose that's the branch that we're going to want to use. If I were to hit test connection right now, we should get good. Okay, so we see that it connects, but it says the authentication method anonymous is not supported. So that's the error. That's a good error. That means that it connected to this, which also means that it has our Get repository or Get bindings installed. So authentication method, we're going to use a private key. I wonder what the default private key is. Uses mapping specified in the C users TeamCity ssh.config if that file exists. So I'm going to go ahead and grab. So I'm going to grab this path, and what we're going to do is we are going to generate a key inside of this path using the PuTTY key generator, and then we're going to add that key to the deployment keys on my repository. Basically, if I come over here to my repository and I go down to settings, I can click over here into my deployment keys. Now, deployment keys are very similar to the SSH keys that I added to my account, but they're not specific to an account. They are specific to a repository, and I can add as many of them as I want. In addition, they only gain read-only access. So basically, what I need to do is I need to generate a key on my deployment server and then upload its public key into this form right here, and then I will be able to authenticate with TeamCity. So I'm going to grab this path right here. So C users TeamCity, and I'm going to jump back into my VM. And we're going to notice a problem right off the bat. I do believe it's not going to even let us into that folder because I'm logged in as Nelson. Let's go into computer, C drive. Let's go to users. Let's double click TeamCity, and I don't have access. I'll just go ahead and give myself access by hitting continue. And then the folder we need to generate the key in is .ssh. Oh, great. It's not going to let us make a .ssh folder because Windows does not support making folders with dots in them, even though it supports folders with dots in them. So I'm going to show you guys a quick workaround for this. I'm going to open up a command prompt. I'm going to cd into TeamCity. And I'm just going to take that new folder and I'm going to say move new folder to .ssh. Or that's move. And now we have a .ssh folder. So now what we need to do is, so where exactly does it want it in? It wants users mapping. Oh, let's not deal with the users mapping file. Let's just say custom private key, and then I'll specify a path to it. I'll still write the private key into the .ssh folder on my TeamCity account, but then I'll just paste in the full path of the private key here. Okay, so how do I generate a private key? Well, we do not have PuTTY installed. We do not have Git Bash installed. So our only option is to go ahead and download one of those two programs onto this virtual machine to generate our key. Alternatively, I could generate the key on my host and plop it into my guest. But for people who might not have the software installed, I want to show you guys how you can grab it and use it to generate your own private public key pair. So I'm going to go into Google and I'm going to type in PuTTY. I'm going to go to the PuTTY download page. And I'm going to scroll down. And I want PuTTY Gen, I believe. And that will download PuTTY Gen. Then I'm going to click on it to run it. And I'm going to get my PuTTY key generator to generate SSH keys. Let's go ahead and say generate, which is going to require me to move the mouse over the blank area, which is going to take a year and a half. Cryptography is actually a really cool subject, by the way. As I'm sitting here mindlessly moving my cursor back and forth through a blank area. Okay, and now we have our key. However, the format that we need the key in for TeamCity is going to be the OpenSSH private key. So let's go ahead and export OpenSSH key by going up to conversions. Are you sure you want to save this key without a passphrase to protect it? Let's go ahead and hit yes. You could add a passphrase if you wanted to. And then I'm going to dump it into this folder right here. Doesn't matter really where I dump it in, but I kind of like it to be in here. And then I'm going to call this key. And hit save. And now you see that my key, my private key, appeared. So now all I have left is my public key. And my public key is going to be the thing that I put into my deployment keys on Bitbucket. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my public key. I'm going to create new, and I'm going to call this key.pub. I'm creating a new file next to my key file in order to keep track of my public key. So as you saw, all I did was I created a file called key.pub. I double-clicked it, opened it in Notepad, and pasted in my public key. Save it out. Unfortunately, my virtual machine is having some emotional issues and is not allowing me to copy and paste this. So I will have to go into my VM and open up Bitbucket and log in and set my deployment keys there. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now that I've logged in and selected my repository, I'm going to go down here to settings. I'm going to find deployment keys, and I'm going to say add key, and the label is going to be TeamCity or VM TeamCity, and the key is going to be this. Then I'm going to say add key, and I now have a deployment key set up with that public key. So the last thing I need to do is go into TeamCity and tell it where the private key is. And then it'll use the private key to authenticate and everything will be good. So the private key is going to be c:/users teamcity.ssh/key. And of course the passphrase is empty because I didn't put a passphrase on it. Now for the moment of truth. We have a successful connection. So we've now connected TeamCity to our source control. So then I'm going to hit create. And now we have a MMO Bitbucket VCS root. So now that we have this VCS root, we can use it in our build configurations. So let's go ahead and just put together a really simple build configuration for doing just a normal build. I just want to do a normal build and that's it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to, remember I'm in my project, by the way. I could also, to get back to this page, you would click on Administration, and then from Administration, you would click on your project. Now that you're in your project, locate your build configurations. I'm going to say Create Build Configuration, and I'm going to call this Build and Test. Now, we haven't put any unit tests in yet, but we will, and this is where that will happen. So every time we do a build, we'll get our unit tests invoked. So we'll be coming back to this task in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Create to create this configuration. Now I need to attach an existing VCS root. So I'm going to attach MMO Bitbucket to it by clicking the Attach button. And now I can configure build steps. So now I need, every configuration is made up of steps. So a step is just, well, it's an individual step. It's an individual, like, atomic piece of something, piece of functionality that's going to be executed in sequence. And wow, this is really new, actually. It scanned my VCS root, and it found my buzz MMO build.proj and my slin. Wow, that's really cool. So I'm just going to hit use this, and I have a build step already created. But I will have to configure the build step. I'm going to go into my build, and I'm going to change my target. Remember, the targets are the individual scripts inside of the build script. And I want to change the target to build solution. So I'm going to say build file path is that. Build version is Microsoft Build Tools 2013. Yeah, why not? Tools version is going to be 4.0. Run platform is going to be, doesn't matter. Targets is going to be compile, I believe is the name I called that, didn't I? Oh, build solution. Okay, so that is pretty much our build step. In addition to the build step, though, we also can provide these command line parameters, and we can provide command line parameters to override certain aspects of MS Build. But what I'm going to do instead is this env variable. I am not going to set it up as a command line parameter into MS Build. Instead, I'm going to set it up as an environment variable on the entire build script. I'll show you why that's important here in a second. I'm going to come back into TeamCity, and I guess I'm just going to hit save. And that's it. That's really all we need. You'll notice we have our version control settings, which is just our awesome little repository. We have one build step, which invokes MS Build and executes build solution. We don't have any triggers. Triggers allow you to trigger builds automatically, like you can set up a nightly build, or you can have it build every time someone commits changes. We have failure conditions, we have build features, dependencies, parameters, and all this fun stuff. Let's go ahead and jump into parameters, because that's really the only other thing that we're going to need. What I need to do is I need to set an environment variable on this build configuration. And what that'll do is I want to set the env environment variable to prod so that it's available from all of my build scripts. So I'm going to say add new parameter, and I'm going to say env.env, and I'm going to call it prod. No, I want it environment variable. Okay, so env.env. Env. Specifies that it's environment variable that I want the build agent to set before it executes MS Build, and env is the name of that environment variable. So I'm going to save it out. And really, that is pretty much it. Let's go ahead and see what our projects page looks like now. So I'm going to click over here to the top left, projects. Wait a year and a half. And now we see we have our project, 3dbuzz.mmo, and we have one configuration, which is build and test. Let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to click run. And we say, no enabled compatible agents found for this build configuration. Please register a build agent or tweak build configuration requirements. So what's going on here? Remember when I said agents were the things that actually performed the builds? Well, agents need to be installed, and they also need to be configured in such a way that they have the capacity to perform the build. So what do I mean by that? Well, our build requires that we have things such as, well, MS Build installed, and we have at least .NET Framework 4.5 installed. So the build agent that we need to run against needs to have those things installed. So let's look at what's going on here. If I click on disconnected, we see that we have a inactivity reason. Agent has unregistered, will upgrade. Let's see here. Let's jump over into our VM and see what's going on. I'm going to say start task manager, and I'm going to look at my processes. And I'm going to say show all processes from all users. I'm going to see what TeamCity is doing. So TeamCity does have a agent service that's running. Let's go ahead and restart our TeamCity agent and see if that works. Alternatively, it just might be a matter of time because it says something about will upgrade, but that's okay. Let's jump back here. Let's open up our services. So I'm going to type in services in my start menu and hit enter. Let's find our TeamCity build agent right here. I'm just going to hit restart. Come back into TeamCity. Let's just hit refresh and see what happens. So it's still going to be disconnected. Okay, so if you run into this with your build agents, the first step to debug the issue is to go into wherever you have TeamCity installed or wherever you have the build agent installed and locate its log folder. So the log folder is going to be somewhere. Let's see here. It's not under there. Let's try C TeamCity build agent logs. Let's go ahead and see what its TeamCity.agent log says. Okay, let's open it up again. Okay, it looks like it was downloading some stuff. Let's look at our wrapper log. Starting new process. Open SCM manager failed access is denied. I wonder if let's see here. Maybe it's just running really slowly. I mean, I want to see if it's actually continuously or doing something. Okay, so it looks like it's upgrading. Looks like it ran into. Let's see, please check. Please check TeamCity build agent service user has enough permission to start and stop the service. I remember this. Okay, since we created a user account, that user account doesn't have permissions to start and stop the TeamCity agent service, and that's going to cause some problems. So let's go ahead and fix that. To do this, we actually have to download a tool to give the TeamCity user permissions to start and stop the service. I'm debating whether or not to do that in the video or just make the TeamCity user an administrator, because if we make the TeamCity user an administrator, then he will be able to perform the start and the stop of the service. But that's actually a suboptimal solution for more secure environments. So I'm just going to show you guys how to go about fixing this without making the TeamCity user an admin. So let's go ahead and fire up Chrome. I'm going to search Google for the subinacl tool, subinacl, and then we want to download it from Microsoft. So what this tool allows us to do is it allows us to set permissions on a per service basis. So I'm going to hit download, and then I'm going to install this. Isn't sysadministration so much fun? It's my favorite thing. It's not. Really? You're going to do this to me now? You're just going to sit there at 0%? There we go. Took longer for the UAC dialog to pop up than it did to install the tool. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and find where that tool is. So that tool will be located under Computer, C, Programs Files x86, I believe, Windows Resource Kits, Tools, and then sub in ACL. I'm going to take this path and copy it to my clipboard. Then I'm going to open up an administrative command prompt, and I'm going to change directory into that path. Okay, so now that I'm here, I'm going to type in sub in ACL. I'm going to say /service, and then I need to put in the service name of the build agent. What's the service name of the build agent? Let's open up our services, open up TeamCity build agent, and we see the name of this service is TC build agent. So I'm going to say TC build agent. Then I'm going to say /grant equals TeamCity equals PTO. Let's make sure this works before I describe what this is. Okay, so what happened is I typed in sub in acl.exe /service, specifying the service that I want to modify. Then I said grant TeamCity, which is the username I wanted to grant permissions to, and I said grant TeamCity PTO. PTO is going to give him access to pause and continue the service, stop and start the service. So the P means pause, the T means start for some reason, and the O means stop. So now that we've done that, we should be able to restart our TeamCity build agent, and it'll perform its upgrade properly this time, as opposed to running into those permission errors. Let's come back into our I'm going to go hunt down that folder again where the logs are, which is going to be C TeamCity build agent logs. And we see a lot more activity here. So it's downloading some updates. That's cool. What else is it doing? Downloading more updates, blah, blah, blah. I wish I had a log viewer installed on this computer. Downloading more stuff. Download all of the things. TeamCity build agent has now downloaded the entire internet. Alright, so right now I'm just watching this log to see when it's done. The upgrade log now has some action in it. Hey, look at that! It is actually self-upgrading itself. See if there's any more activity here. Okay, the upgrade log has some more activity in it. I'm just watching the file size right now. The wrapper just had some activity. What is it doing? This is the most fun I've had in a long time. Sitting here, hitting F5 and opening up Notepad documents. I really do need to install a log viewer on this. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. It is using logs directory and blah, blah, blah. It looks like it just restarted itself. Warning. Don't care. It's unpacking plugins. In fact, I can probably see it working in my task manager because I can already feel the virtual machine kind of getting a little sluggish here. We see Java is doing some work. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'll start it back up once this CPU usage goes back down to 0. All right, looks like our CPU usage is now back down to 0. So maybe that means it started. Let's open up our TeamCity agent log and see what's down at the bottom. It registered itself. Alrighty. That means it is now registered. So let's come back here, and what do we see? Without even refreshing the page, we already see our build agents went up to 1, we are connected, and we are authorized. So now let's jump over to our projects tab and hit run, and it still says that it's not compatible. It's probably not compatible because okay, let's change our we're going to change our build MS Build Tools version, because I don't know if the Build Tools version that we have, because I don't want to install Visual Studio. If we installed Visual Studio 2013, I bet you 25 cents that it would work. But in the case that but that case is irrelevant because I really want to avoid installing Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and open up on our administration tab, let's open up our projects, expand our 3D Buzz MMO project, click on build and test. I'm going to go into my build step, MS Build, click on that, and I'm going to change my MS Build version. I'm going to change it to use the Microsoft.NET Framework 4.5, which should work. It should be there because I have .NET Framework 4.5 installed on the computer that has the build agent on it. So let's hit save, and our build steps settings have been updated. Let's go back to our agents and look at our agent again. And actually, hold on, it already happened. It just decided to build. Okay, so some quick things. Now it's running a build. When it's running a build, we can view a real-time log of what's going on. So I'm going to click this little down arrow, and I'm going to click build log, and I'm going to wait. And wait. And then I'm going to watch the tail. And now I can watch in a really nice, clean format of what's going on during the build. Okay, so yeah, we got some warnings, but that's cool. But overall, it looks like it's building. And it failed. Okay, so when you see it failed like this, let's switch back to the tree view, and it'll drill down exactly where it failed. So we see that it failed right here, build default targets. It failed on the web project. Remember when I said I didn't want to install Visual Studio? Well, I knew that at one point I would have to do this, and it looks like I have to do this now. Unfortunately, some of the build targets that are referenced by solutions that are ASP.NET MVC projects are not in existence in the .NET Framework by default. They only come around with Visual Studio. Now, fortunately, this is a very easy fix, but I wanted to just point this out. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to point this out until we did our build and package, but it looks like it's not even going to let me do my build at all until I get these files moved over. So let me show you guys really quickly how to fix this. I'm going to copy this path on my host, and I'm going to open up a file explorer. I'm going to wait a year for Clover to get its act together. Then I'm going to paste it right here. And these are the two files that I'm going to need to install on my build machine with the exact same path. And this is a necessity if you are wanting to build ASP.NET MVC projects on a continuous integration server. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump over to program files. Let me see, what's the full path again? Program files, x86, MS build. I don't think I do have an MS build folder. Microsoft. Okay, so after I get into Microsoft, I have to say new folder, Visual Studio. Under Visual Studio, I'm going to create a new folder, version 1.11.0. Now I've created the folder. Now I'm just going to click and drag these folder files over into my virtual machine. And it says you will need to provide administrator permission, which is fine. And now I've added these two files to the same path on my build machine. And this will make it so we don't have to install Visual Studio on our build machine. Let's come back to TeamCity, come back to our projects tab, and let's run this build again. So I'm going to say run, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up its log. So I'm going to open up its build log, and I'm going to watch the tail. and we still get a build failed. Switch back to tree view. Blah, blah, blah. We might have missed a file. Imported projects, program files, MS Build, Microsoft Visual Studio version. Oh, Visual Studio doesn't have a space in it. Derp. Of course it doesn't have a. Why would it have it? Why? Why would you put a space in there when, or, yeah, it's like what? There aren't words. There are no words. No words are happening. Okay, we're gonna come back here. We're gonna hit run one more time, and we're gonna see if it works. It's going to copy down a local copy of our repository, and it's still going to fail. Don't tell me I put a space in web applications. Oh, I didn't. People probably have already noticed this mistake. These guys go under a folder named web applications. So I'm just going to dump them right into the web applications folder. Come back into Chrome, come back to our projects tab, hit run. Wait for it to get started. Open up its build log. And there we go. We have our first successful build. It says success. We have no artifacts, and we have no changes. So let me go ahead and show you guys what would happen if we did a change and then wanted to build it again on our server. So I'm going to come into Visual Studio. Now I'm going to make a change. I'm going to go into the home page. Doesn't matter what I do. And say, no launcher available yet. Check back soon. Something like that. Doesn't matter what change I make. Now I'm going to bring over source tree. I'm going to stage it. I'm going to commit it. And I'm going to say some change. I'm going to hit commit. Then I'm going to hit push. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm pushing up to Bitbucket. Then I'm going to come back to TeamCity on my host. And I'm going to hit run. And what we're going to see here is that it is going to find the change. It is going to synchronize itself. And then it is going to run the build again. As you see, we now have one change. We see Nelson Lakay. If we hover over this, it says some change, and you see that we edited one file, and it was this shistmal right here. So this really is one of the most awesome things about continuous integration, particularly TeamCity. So yeah, we haven't plugged in any of our other tasks yet. We need to plug in our deploy website, deploy Photon server, deploy client, deploy launcher tasks, but we'll do that here in a little bit in the next video or so. Before I do that, let's go ahead and click changes. And as you see, we can click on this changes tab and we can actually look at all the changes I've made and what builds that they were a part of. So again, really, really cool stuff. Anyway, guys, we'll see you guys in the next video.